Some families like to go on a picnic together. Some families who are a bit less united might have a problem with relationship with each other. And some families are much more united towards a specific goal. And we will talk about what that goal might be today, where we'll be talking about the Tamimi family. We'll be talking about a few members, I think specifically focusing on, and now I don't have her name ahead of me. Maybe Alex can remind me.
The most well, there's a few that are very famous, but the one that's called in the media Shirley Temper. She is the blonde-haired, long-locked Ahead Tamimi or Al Tamimi, depending on who you're asking.
So we will be going through all of that, and Alex already talked. Joining me today is Alex. Welcome to the Daily Objective. So since Alex, you've already mentioned Ahead Tamimi, can you? Well, first, maybe can you just give us sort of like a general overview? Why is the Tamimi family sort of like? What are they known for, or why basically why are we talking about them?
Well, okay, fine. So if you were to go off of what the sort of mainstream media sort of speaks of this family, and even off of Ahead's profile in Glamour magazine, you would think that she is from a village called Nabi Saleh, and what they do is they kind of have protests, and that the brutal IDF just comes along and is just hunting this family down, right? She has these very iconic looking blonde locks. And she does look certainly very unique from a perspective of the way that she dresses. And also, uh, and these kind of things really seem to have kind of captured the imagination of really ignorant people in the West. And then in Israel, of course, we know this family from such classics as the murder of Haim Mizrahi, whereby this student was murdered by Saeed Tamimi, and put in the trunk of a car and the car was then set on fire. Two more of Tamimi's were sent to prison for that particular murder because it was a massive conspiracy involving the whole family, of course, in the village. Uh, and that was Nizar and, of course, Ahmed Al Tamimi. And probably the most famous one is Ahlam Tamimi, who masterminded two bombings actually. One wasn't that successful, and the second was unfortunately very successful, killing 16 people, three Americans. Sadly, one actually just recently passed away, who had been in a coma since actually that fateful event. Um, in addition to, I mean, there's so many members of this family that are terrorists, but Tamimi as well, also killing somebody just recently, 2017. Whereas the other Tamimis, their career, so to speak, has a little bit longer than that. And of course, so that's what we understand, who we understand them in the kind of, and two of them, well, actually more than two, were released in the Gilad Shalit deal. Nitzar and Ahalam, who again committed two separate crimes in two separate decades, two separate terrorist attacks in two separate decades. Didn't they're two first cousins, okay, which obviously means they're two first cousins, they're Palestinians, therefore they're bride and groom. They got married in Jordan in a joyous ceremony. That the whole Tamimi clan was present, including glamour, glamour profile Ahead Tamimi, the peaceful, the peaceful. Well, she's practically Joan of Arc.
Yeah, so just quickly, someone in the chat is asking, is she the girl in the photo of the video? So yeah, she is on the thumbnail. And if you look her up on X or anywhere on the specifically talking about Aead Tamimi, if you look her up on social media, specifically the picture I used is when she's standing, I think, next to IDF woman, and she's sort of like, she has that defiant sort of like look in her eyes. And this is something you oftentimes see. As I've said, if you go on X, you'll find a lot of her even when she was much younger. I think the video that I've seen, she might have been like
Yeah.
8 or 9 or something, and basically there were IDF soldiers around, and she was running around, yelling at them, screaming at them. I'm trying to remember if she even tried to harm
No,
one of them.
she went to jail for, for a few weeks for punching one of them. And by the way, this is not just like an isolated, you punch an IDF soldier, you go to jail. This is a pattern of behavior. And the first time I believe she was arrested was when she was 17, something to that nature. And again, we're talking about violence. So it's not as if, it's just kind of getting into a bit of a scuffle with the IDF, right? And, no IDF soldier wants to be in the position whereby they're being filmed by a whole bunch of people fighting with a young girl, literally fighting with a young, it's your worst nightmare because you don't, you don't have the ability of just being able just to walk away. And these, because you are seeing it from one perspective of the where Aead Tamimi is just standing there all alone. She's got her whole murderous, clan family all behind her, and they are, they may indeed actually have weapons. They set these huge fires, and this is a pattern of behavior that happens every Friday. And the international media, they really are. It's not even as if it's not even mentioned in any of the profiles that have been done in the Western media. Exactly, why it is that that Aead, what kind of family she's from, what her family history is not even any mention. Just that her, uncles and cousins and brothers, they've been getting into trouble and going to prison. Why have they been going to prison? Why? Are they just being picked on? Is that the case? I mean, and I just want to say as well is that like there are real victims to this family. One, when a person like Aead Tamimi, right, who is the female mastermind of the suicide bombing, is released, and they get to go to Jordan and broadcast on Jordanian TV, basically a TV show, right? To huge crowds. It does two things. One, it inspires others to go out there and commit more acts of violence. And the second is if it actually crushes all of the victims' families. And one victim I can think of is her name is Malky Roth. Passed away. She was killed brutally at the age of 15. And her father has basically spent the past, since Shalit deal, so that would be 2011, trying to get Aead Tamimi extradited from Jordan. There's a $5 million bounty on Aead Tamimi's head. She's the most senior female terrorist on the FBI most wanted list. She is seriously, I mean, she's not just like gotten into a little bit of trouble. So the political will should be there to actually extradite her from Jordan, which is a whole other kind of subject.
Someone is asking, can we spell her name? So I'll put her name in the chat. Okay, there you go. Aead Tamimi. First, also thank you, Martin, for becoming becoming a member. There's going to be a new peek of answers video in just about 2 hours. You'll get a notification about that on YouTube, so you should be able to see that. And when people talk about this, and that's the way sort of especially like her family or her is sort of like symbolized as, they're just resisting the occupation, the Israeli occupation forces, as many people, or as some people like to refer to the IDF, are taking over the land, and they are fighting back. And oftentimes you see comparisons, people saying that the Israelis are becoming what they hated, that Israelis are becoming a Nazis. And whenever I see those videos about like her confronting the IDF, I'm always thinking that's like the weakest occupational force I've ever seen. Like the fact that they are allowed, and there's like a debate to what should be basically sort of like terms of engagement when you have technically as civilians, but we might talk about more about that. But yeah, that you have like they have like someone screaming to their face, like you're a soldier and someone comes to you and screams to your face. And the fact that basically the IDF, at least from what I've seen, is expected to do nothing and basically just let it sort of go through
Well,
is
well, to
yeah.
be, I just want to say as well, like, so this whole thing in Nabi Saleh has been going on since 2008, and the Tamimi, kind of so I want to explain something about Palestinian society. So, in Palestinian society, it is not, it's not like many societies, but okay, so there are two different types of systems of government, right? So the first is going to be like the regular system of government, right? That sits in Ramallah. But the kind of most obvious one and the most prominent one is going to be the Khamulas, right? So the Khamula is a way of saying like municipality, but it means like a tribe, right? So that is your clan. And there's I want to say five main clans, and those clans are, everybody knows who the tribes are, right? And then you have what's called like notable families, right? And Tamimis, like the Barghoutis, who were another terror clan that we won't touch on, that is what they are known for, is that they are basically like the Fatah royal family. Well, no, the Barghoutis are the royal family of Fatah, and the Tamimis are, I don't know, maybe not quite the royal family, but they are like really as close to royalty as you might be able to get, right? In terms of Fatah, because Fatah is the dominant one that's going to be in the West Bank. Although Hamas is having more popularity, but they're far more a Gaza kind of they're more of a Gaza movement because they're more closely affiliated with obviously, well, they're just an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is Egyptian. Whereas, the ones that are over in the West Bank, they're obviously they're Jordanian, right? So it's an own kind of special firebrand Jordanian type of terror. However, one of the things that the Tamimis have been able to do very successfully, they had a vision, and that vision was to dress Ahead and also all the other children in Nabi Saleh in clothes you typically don't see Palestinians dress in. So very westernized clothes. They're not they're meant, it's very deliberate that they are meant to be, you're meant to think that they look like you, right? Because, all of a sudden, I think probably there is a lot of prejudice in the West when you see, somebody with a hijab throwing stones. It's obviously gonna not make you feel great. But you're meant to feel like, wait, this is just like Wisconsin, that they're just like regular New Yorkers, but really are not. And so even so this is a very careful campaign that they have been doing since 2009, specifically with Nabi Saleh. And Nabi Saleh is a village where it's basically all of this one type of Hamula, but it's mainly the Tamimi clan. There are Tamimis, of course, in other places. There's definitely a strong Tamimi presence in Ramallah, which is, natural. But yeah. What they do is
Just
they get,
just
yeah,
just quickly,
sorry.
so people have context. Where exactly is this village located? Or
Okay.
basically under whose authority, in a sense, it should be?
Okay. Well,
Well, it is rather than it
yeah.
should be.
Well, it is under the Palestinian Authority, but it is under the authority of the Tamimi clan because wherever you have a dominant clan, that is who the IDF will go to solve disputes and stuff, right? That is actually why Jenin kind of is such a hotbed of terrorism because there isn't one dominant clan. But that's a side note. Yeah. So that's where it is. It's walking distance from Jerusalem, probably an hour and a half from Jerusalem. No, yeah, an hour and a half if you're not a quick walker to Jerusalem. Um, and it's you can see Ramallah and you can see Jerusalem from the village. And what they would want to do is they would bring all of the gullible leftists from all around the world. It was an international kind of affair, including Israel, and they would provoke the IDF into coming and having this, very kind of filmable eclipse, like the one of her attacking the soldier. And sadly, it is very sad that there was actually a child from the family, a toddler, I believe, who was killed at one of these riots by a rubber bullet. I do think, and that is, a real tragedy because. But if you understand that this is what they do, is they bring their kids and they start a fight with an army. I mean, I can't even imagine if I see the IDF and I see the IDF having a fight with someone else, you take your kids inside. You don't you don't send the kids out to that kind of thing. And Ahead was kind of the darling, I would say, of even the Israeli left, who were totally enamored with her, especially I think because of the way she looked. Because she does look very unique. She does dress very unique. And then she posted just after October 7th this kind of declaration that she wanted to. She came out of the closet as a Nazi. Who would have thunk? Saying, I want to drink the blood of the Jews and I want to eat the skulls of the Jews. And it was almost like, oh, who would have known? Who would have known that lovely girl with the blonde hair? She's actually like kind of like, maybe also a terrorist. And I just keep seeing her, and she's someone that I really feel is I feel that I feel that her type of war is far more pernicious a type of war um, than the war that even her aunt and uncle, who are also married, than the type of war that they had against Israel. Because you're not going to see, the murderers, the actual, you actually do. One of her cousins, well, sorry, one of her uncles is a journalist for BBC, for BBC Arabic, the killers of Haim Mizrahi. So yeah, um, maybe they don't. I mean, I'm sure they must know it because I'm sure they must be being told your contributor is a murderer, right? Has served time in Israeli jail, and to say I really want people to understand the truth about this family, and also to understand that Ahead, okay, it actually all comes down to philosophy and the philosophy of the Israelis, and that's kind of been the problem. Is that Ahead Ahead has understood, okay, that there is no consequences at all to anything you do, including murder, because most of her family members who have committed severe acts of violence, one of them serving a 16 life sentences, they get released in these hostage deals. And so that is her philosophy. That is her understanding of life. That, yes, there, even let's say if you imagined that killing the Jews is absolutely amazing, that there always has to be that deterrent factor of, yeah, but I really don't want to go to jail for the rest of my life. That would suck. But there's appears to be no consequences. This is like it's a just a free season, I would say.
Yeah, there are 2 points I kind of want to bring up because there is this almost, and I think we've seen this since October 7th, but that's when I sort of started more actively watching the scene. So I'm sure this has been happening even before. There is this basically a standard for the Palestinians is they cannot do any wrong, and the standard for Israel is they can't do no wrong, sort of like the opposite, like they are not able and Israel shouldn't ever like screw up. And when you have a military conflict, when you have even military occupation, there bad stuff will happen. That's just something that will happen. That's something that's unfortunate. But what Israel is doing, as any Western country does, they have accountability and they have systems to either prevent these bad things from happening, or basically to make sure they don't happen again. And sort of like the other point is that it you can see like from the actions of Aead Tamimi, at least some of them, you can see that those actions actually wouldn't work if Israel was what they believe they are.
Mhm.
When it comes to sort of like a peaceful protests only work against a nation that has respect for rights, that has respect for protesting, that has sort of like the better aspects that you can appeal to. I always like to remind before the when people talk about the American Revolution and that it was, this like violent thing. Years before the revolution, the founding fathers tried to appeal to the British government because they believed that they would understand what they mean. And that's uh that's something that's completely something that they are completely ignoring here. Because if Israel was this, as they say, basically this like Nazi force, Nazi occupational force, you wouldn't be able to walk up to them and like
No,
ask, can we do better? You wouldn't be able to get out of
yeah.
prison. You wouldn't be able to, something I've seen, apparently she was able to study while being in prison. You wouldn't be able to do anything of that if it was actually true. So this is like what's really insane when it comes to when people say, Israel is just locking up people with no consequence.
Well, yeah, one of her uncles managed to petition the court for a kidney transplant whilst he was in jail. Which again, this so it's and so again, yes, there's no deterrence, and not only that, you would think as well that if she wants to be famous as much as I think she wants to be famous, you would also think, well, I'm not sure how much I'll be able to pull the wool over the eyes of the West. But we should understand it, I think, as Israelis, right? We should understand it. We know who these people are. We know who they are. We know this family. This should not be a surprise to us. It's as if, okay, take an example, Daniel. I say to you, Daniel, I have a great girl I want to set you up with. Okay. Now, her brother and mother and father, right? They're all murderers in separate instances. You're trying to tell me that she might be a great girl, that you're not gonna have a slight concern about what type of family that this person came from, right? That you're not going to, it's not going to come in to your brain when you're going to say, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. Now, of course, the girl might be just amazing and wonderful and great, but that has not come into any of the reporting that anybody seems to be wanting to make about this family. And Francesca of Albanese, she actually said that she says the famous Tamimi family are a sign of a family which is an emblem of peaceful resistance. And I was like, whoa! I mean, that is really it's like saying, oh, the Gambino crime family. I was saying to you before. Yeah, it's just, the very peaceful Gambino crime family. They're just a real emblem of American law and order. You would say, I'm not so sure about that. You'd have to change the definitions of law and order.
Yeah, I mean, of course, no child gets the sins of the parents, so it doesn't like automatically disqualify her. But we
Hmm.
are not actually talking about dating her. We are talking about the national security of Israel when it comes to how it deals with things, and the fact that again, it's always like surprising the fact that if you check almost any like Hamas leaders in the that have been killed recently, it's like they were already in Israeli prison at some point, and that's what
Hmm.
like really ridiculous. The fact that this could have been avoided, like all these people were in Israeli prison at some point, and not just like randomly for something that they should have probably spent the rest of their lives, like killing either civilians, killing soldiers. Uh, so yeah, this yeah,
And
it's
uh, and also to all of the Israeli leftists, not that they're going to be watching this, how did the villagers of Nabi Saleh kill Haim Mizrahi? They were his friends. They were his friends, and they lured him into handing over his gun. And after which of course, they killed him in the most brutal way. So, and they were his friends for a long time. I mean, the extremist, violent Jewish settler, as they, would have tried to portray, shopped all the time at their village, buying eggs, and was friendly enough to hand over his gun, okay, for a photo, right? So I don't know. I suppose that really is maybe misunderestimating your enemies.
we also have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says Alex is a great contribution to ARCK. I would agree. Thank you also Bonnie for a super chat, and thank you Jonathan for your super chat again. So just quickly, I've seen a couple of chats that I thought might be interesting, although they are going a bit off topic. Someone was asking, why do you hate Netanyahu? Is it because he's religious? And maybe I'll let Alex answer. Well, first, if you agree that you do hate Netanyahu, and
So listen, I don't have actually I had begun to feel a little bit what's the word? More positively towards him. And then I started researching this family and I started thinking about Gilad Shalit and Gilad Shalit deal. And then I was thinking about the Tamimi family and a thousand terrorists, like Ahlan. 16 life sentences was serving. So that 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 deal led us to October 7th and will lead us sadly to many more, I believe, including I wouldn't be surprised if one day this Goldilocks ends up actually killing someone. Not that she isn't killing people every day, because she is inspiring terrorism. I mean, her aunt literally runs a Hamas-run media organization. So it's things like that that make you feel not that warm and fuzzy inside. And by the way, Hebe is as secular comes. I remember from back in the day where he was one of the things that kind of brought on the kind of wrath, I would say, of the religious, is that he was always talking about how much he loves eating shrimps and all of this kind of stuff. So he is not your kind of, he has never been coming at this from he'll go wherever the wind blows, but who he is to his core is not a religious person.
Yeah, when it's always hard to sort of like have a sort of standard to evaluate politicians, because to large extent they are supposed to represent the people who elected them. So sort of like criticizing Netanyahu for not pursuing the policy I would want to. Well, that's not what he was elected for. So it's sort of like hard to. I always say like we just get politicians we deserve. So I think criticizing the people is much more important, or sort of like a general philosophy and sort of
Mhm.
general philosophy of Israel is lacking when it comes to fully defending yourself, or basically fully making sure the country is safe. But I think I've also maybe gotten a bit better opinion of Netanyahu maybe in the last few weeks or so, probably since the pager attack. But also, I don't have any. I know some, but I know very little about his past. It's not the first time he's been a prime minister, so I cannot really make a
Well,
super comprehensive judgment.
Well, my judgment also is going to be a lot more favorable than other prime ministers, but certainly, like the Gilad Shalit deal was a major betrayal, and despite the fact that I think that many people had, but then again, there was so I don't know now that I've begun to kind of criticize him. I start thinking about all the other people, and now I'm all of a sudden I want to start being like, maybe I'm going to start helping him to run again. I swing from I swing from these two extremes.
Yeah, it's also important to remember we should always be critical of politicians. Just even if they are the best thing we can get right now, you should always
Hmm.
expect the most you can from politicians. You should. It's not a team sport when it's like, okay, our guy won. Now he can just do whatever he wants, and you'll
Right.
be like okay with it. Even if your best candidate wins, which I find myself oftentimes in Slovakia, I
Hmm.
usually I shit on my own party, the party I vote for the most, because it's like I want you to like actually represent my views and not just,
Right.
screw around or something.
Yeah, because you do because I would have expected one of the other parties to cut a terrible deal and release a whole bunch of terrorists, right? You wouldn't have voted for. I mean, it's not what you would have. Being dovish is not something people have accused Bibi of, although I would.
So we've actually talked a lot about this. I was surprised because it was a little bit of a last minute. But Alex, anything you'd like to add about this
Yeah, I
family?
actually would. Yeah, I would. And instead of focusing on this file family, I would actually like to focus on Arnold Roth, who was the father of Malky Roth, who was killed. Um, it's actually very difficult for me to walk past that. I walk past the scene of that bombing every day. And so it is difficult to look at that. But her father has been wanting Americans to get involved in any way they possibly can. There's a lot of ways you can get involved with trying to pressure the American government um, to uh, to force Jordan to extradite Ahlan for her part in masterminding the bombing. And it's not just a case of masterminding; she drove the bomber to the spot, right? So, and she's never ever backed down over her, role in it. She often says she's disappointed that they were only able to murder that, 16, and they so I would say have a look at the Malky Roth Foundation, although that's really just talking about their sort of philanthropy. But then there is also a petition, and I know people will say, well, what good is a petition going to do? I actually think if at least to get people to speak about this particular victim and this particular terrorist, and also speak to anybody in a position of maybe even a small degree of influence. I know that they would want that, but we want justice for all of this family's victims, of which there are, dozens.
Yeah, and so I put the links to both the petition and the foundation in both the chat and the description, so people can check that out. Thank you, Enric, for a super chat. He says thanks. Alex is very good. I would agree. And also something that's sort of unique to America that I've never really heard somewhere else is you can call your congressman and senator. And when it comes to, you've mentioned she is on the terrorist list. So when it comes to things like this, you have many different ways you can sort of put your ideas through. And from what I understand, like actually calling your representatives is actually a very effective way of getting your ideas through, because they do actually take it seriously, because they know someone cares enough to actually call. Maybe there are more people who actually would decide their vote based on that.
Hmm. And if also there's a $5 million reward out for her, so maybe drive her to the American embassy if anybody sees her out and about in Amman. Although she's not difficult to find, she works for a TV station.
Thank you, Alex, for joining me today. It was real great to talk to you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. As I've said, there's the next Learn Pick of answers. Today, it's going to be from a question from Michael Kaufman about Trump's Middle Eastern policy and Ukraine. So if you are a YouTube member, you should be able to see the announcement in just about 2 hours or so. Again, thank you, Alex, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye-bye.